So I'm just wondering, by way of starting, if you could talk a little bit about what's been happening the last 6 months in terms of how Orchard Place Apartments has been treating you, responding or not responding to the concerns you have about living here.
Yes. 6 months ago, in October of 2020, there was a fire next door which destroyed that apartment. And then in December of 2022, there was a flood in that same apartment from a burst pipe, and we ended up with half of our apartment flooded. Thankfully, we didn't have fire damage, although there was a really bad smell and a bunch of ash smoke damage. And then again, our apartment was flooded, there was personal damage, there's been water damage to the walls and the floor. And in that time, we could not get anybody to talk to us at property management. They kind of ignored our maintenance requests. Nobody checked in on us. And after the flood, when I contacted them at the end of December to say we need somebody in to inspect this, I was told they would call me back in a few days and schedule that with me and get back to us on some stuff about the lease, and I never heard back from them. From that point, in 2023, every time I've tried to reach out to the office to discuss things, whether it's maintenance or having to do with our lease or our rent, they always turn around with some sort of bill or a threat and say absolutely nothing with what we're actually calling to talk about. And it's been very rude, very disrespectful treatment. There's been yelling. I'm not able to get my point across, and it's just at that point that we're fed up because our home is not safe. They just brought somebody in to inspect it. We still don't know if they're going to do anything about that damage or when that damage is going to be taken care of. And so we started working with the Grand Rapids Area Tenants Union, who have been amazing at keeping us grounded in all of this. And the union helped us reach out to the apartment office about our requests for re-signing our lease and the money they said that we owed, even though we paid rent on time every month, and the unsafe condition of our home. There was an email sent, there was no response from the office, so we started a phone campaign where supporters called in to the office to try and find out, why this is happening and express their support for us. And that's when the office started escalating things. So we decided to hold a protest.
Well, just before the protest, about 2 weeks ago, you and members of the tenant union met with office management. So what happened at that meeting, again, briefly?
Yes.
And what did they promise, and whether or not they followed through with those promises?
The meeting was awful. I wanted to have a discussion about what's wrong and how we're going to move forward, and there was none of that. I was yelled at. The people that were there with us, my mom, who's the other tenant, and representatives of the union, we were yelled at, we were dismissed. I received an email that afternoon saying that they would have an inspector in that week and that they would schedule a maintenance inspection with us. And when they came, there was maintenance, both managers and the inspector for the damage, all at once. They were more concerned about their sink than anything else. And from that point, we weren't getting anything addressed. We weren't hearing anything about our lease or about the damage, and so we decided to host a protest.
Okay. And that protest was a week ago. And talk to us a little bit about how you felt about how that went. How did they respond? And then, what about it that was really kind of encouraging and inspiring to you about what took place?
Yes. So with the union and some friends and residents, there were about 10 of us that went down there, and we were met by private security, which has never been on property. They're not a usual part of our complex. and we were told that we could not hold the protest. We decided to anyways with the live stream, and we almost instantly had so many residents watching, chanting along, talking to us and telling us their stories, and it was great. And then the apartment office and the apartment manager, Cheryl, decided to call the Grand Rapids Police Department to have us removed. And we gathered up, we collected ourselves, we stepped off property, and we continued for a while. All while residents were encouraging us, supporting us, chanting with us. Yeah.
And then within minutes after the protest was over and you were back in your apartment, you had a knock at your door.
Yes. It was Cheryl with two security members handing me a notice for collection of property, telling us that we had 30 days to move out of the apartment before they started the eviction process.
So it seems like it was a clear retaliation.
Yes, there's no doubt in my mind that it was because we protested.
Okay. And lastly, maybe could you just say something about, both your own experience and then just in general, why it's important for tenants to organize with other tenants to be able to, defend themselves and to build sort of tenant power so that you don't feel overwhelmed by the kind of stuff that these large corporations, like the one that owns Orchard Place Apartments, can do whatever they want to you.
Yes. Thanks to the Grand Rapids Area Tenants Union, I started talking to other residents about what we were experiencing, and they instantly started. We had so many people sharing their stories that were very similar to ours, whether it was the treatment of management and maintenance personnel, whether it was how impossible it is to contact the corporate office at Hispanic Housing Development Corporation, which is based out of Chicago, so it's not like we can just drive and talk to somebody. Maintenance issues going unchecked for years, and it's been encouraging. And I have people, every time I knock on a neighbor's door, there's support. I've had many of the other residents say, how can I get involved? And it was really easy to dismiss some of those things until hearing some of those stories and realizing just how exhausting all of this has been, just how much it's worn us down. When they were working on the construction next door after the fire recently, there were some kind of fumes that were so bad we had to air our apartment out for 3 days during an ice storm. It was awful, we were nauseous, and it just felt like a thing that was just happening to us. And it was easy to feel like we were exaggerating, and we're not. It's not just us. And that's really what talking to my neighbors has given me. And there's hope in the idea of the power of our collective voice being able to make some changes so all of us here can feel safe in our homes.